everyone! It's been a while since I've actually sat down and recorded a video, so this feels a little weird. And I actually adopted this little guy. His name is Mowgli, because he's our feral child. He's very attached, so he's probably gonna be here for the video. Say hi! Okay. Anyways, I've made videos in the past criticizing pick-me vegans, especially for their promotion of reducitarianism. I even have a video titled Why I Don't Promote Reducitarianism. So the title of this video may seem a bit jarring. I just want to say that nowhere in this video will I be attempting to justify the behavior of quote-unquote bad vegans. My argument is simply that they should call themselves vegan, and vegans should chill a little with the "you're either vegan or you're not" rhetoric. My defense of bad vegans is not of their behavior, it's of their identity. So let's back up a little and define what I mean by bad vegan. I think it's important to distinguish bad vegans from flexitarians or reducitarians. A flexitarian or reducitarian is someone who views veganism as a moral good, but clearly doesn't view it as a moral imperative. They think reducing their consumption of animal products is good enough. A bad vegan recognizes that veganism is a moral imperative, but they are imperfect in their consumption. The qualifier bad is an acknowledgement that their actions, not fully living up to the vegan standard, are in fact bad. If you've seen my past content critiquing ex-vegans and thought, Catherine cares too much about policing other people's consumption, let me tell you that is not the case. I care way more about people maintaining their identity as vegan than I do about how strictly they adhere to the vegan standard. Because when you identify as vegan, you make vegan choices at least the majority of the time, and you're more likely to get involved with animal rights activism. But when you abandon the vegan label, you slip back into complacency. I've been vegan for 11 years. In the early days, I was what I'd call a bad vegan. I definitely had a close enough attitude and a willful ignorance regarding certain things. I'd be lying if I said I haven't retained a bit of this attitude to this day, but I've certainly evolved. I know y'all want examples, so here's one. I continuously let my mom buy me expensive makeup for Christmas that I knew wasn't vegan because I had bad acne and I was very attached to this particular foundation. Was it wrong? Yes. But was it wrong for me to call myself vegan? I don't think so. I was very passionate about veganism. Every school assignment where I had the freedom to choose the topic, I would choose something related to veganism. I went off on Facebook about veganism. I was the president of my campus animal rights club. I think identifying as a vegan back then is what has kept me vegan for so long, and what pushed me to eventually be like, alright bitch, get it together. Stop making these exceptions. I'm not such a bad vegan anymore, but I'm still shedding bad vegan habits. For example, I just recently learned that Aquaphor isn't vegan because it contains lanolin, which is made out of sheepskin or some shit. Like, you've been vegan for 11 years and you didn't know that? That is willful ignorance right there. Help me out in the comments and tell me what the best substitute for Aquaphor is, because Vaseline isn't it. Anyways, another bad vegan tendency I have is that I don't give a shit about insects. I'm not out here buying jars of honey or torturing ants for fun, but I'd be lying if I said I haven't made exceptions for things that contain honey, or killed spiders in my house. I understand that it's wrong. There's no justification for my behavior. I'm just being honest. Having been involved in animal rights activism and an environmental nonprofit for years, I know a lot of vegans. I would say at least half of them, if not more, are bad vegans. And some of these people are serious animal rights activists. Do you honestly think it's good for the advancement of the vegan movement to insist that all of these people ditch the vegan label and identify as non-vegans instead? I'm not gonna blame vegans for pushing people away from veganism, because ultimately I think the responsibility falls on the individual. But I don't think it helps to say things like, there's no such thing as an imperfect vegan, you're either vegan or you're not. I think there absolutely is a such thing as an imperfect vegan. And no, I don't just mean that we're all imperfect vegans because nobody can avoid animal products 100% of the time. I mean there are vegans who occasionally make bad choices that fall outside of what is possible and practicable. And again, I don't condone these choices. Like I said, these are bad, condemnable choices. But I think it's better for people to retain their vegan identity so they continue to view these choices as bad, rather than lose their vegan identity, because then they'll try to justify their choices so they can retain their identity as a good person. That said, I think that bad vegans have a tendency to justify their behavior at times. Like, they recognize that their choices aren't technically vegan and see them as bad, but not that bad. For a long time, I felt little conviction for avoiding products that I was particularly attached to that contained small amounts of animal byproducts, because I fell for the boycotting is futile line of thinking. Like, does buying this product really impact the demand? It's not like animals are being killed for these specific ingredients. If we stop buying meat, dairy, and eggs, these companies will just find alternatives to these byproducts. But as it turns out, the animal agriculture industry does profit off of these byproducts, which is highlighted in the book Every 12 Seconds, an expose of the animal ag industry written by a political scientist who went undercover at a slaughterhouse. Apparently, without the sale of these byproducts, these industries would not be profitable. The prime cuts of flesh do not produce high enough profit margins on their own. I also recommend reading the paper Against Inefficacy Objections if you're unconvinced that your purchases have a real impact on demand. And when it comes to insects, their experience of suffering may not be as bad or as relatable as a cow's or pig's, but that doesn't justify exploiting and killing them for food or cosmetics, or because you're too lazy to take them out of your house. If you haven't picked up on it already, the underlying theme of this video is the power of identity when it comes to our behavior. If you've read Atomic Habits, you'll know that if you want to change your habits, you have to change your identity first. If you want to quit smoking, you better start identifying as a non-smoker. If you slip up and have a cigarette, this doesn't have to trigger an identity crisis. Likewise, eating a pastry that has a bit of dairy in it in a moment of weakness doesn't have to trigger an identity crisis. As long as you acknowledge that eating things that contain dairy isn't vegan, I don't really give a shit if you call yourself vegan. Actually, I'd prefer that you call yourself vegan. If these slip-ups are truly rare occurrences, you're vegan in my book. However, there are people I know whose standards are too lax for me to consider them vegan. But because of the power of identity, I'm not going to fight them on their choice to identify as vegan. I'll push back on their behavior, but not so much on how they label themselves. The power of identity is very evident in the behavior of carnists. It explains why ex-vegans like Bonnie Rebecca insist that they only plan to eat a small amount of fish and eggs, and then a few months later they're eating cheese and bacon. It explains why people will go out of their way to make 2 separate batches of chocolate chip cookies for the Christmas party, despite the fact that the taste is indistinguishable, and they could save time by making 1 batch of vegan cookies for everyone. Because vegan cookies are for vegans, and normal cookies are for normal people. I had a vegan friend confess that she had fallen off the wagon while she was pregnant because her cravings were so strong. And while I don't condone giving into cravings for animal products, I honestly didn't have the visceral reaction I get when people tell me that they're no longer vegan because their cravings were a clear sign that they needed meat. The difference between saying, I've been a bad vegan, I need to get back on track, and I'm not vegan anymore, is paramount. The first person still has conviction, while the second person has lost it. Identifying as vegan, even when you sometimes fail to adhere to the vegan standard, helps you maintain conviction. I can hear your response already, but veganism has a definition, and if you don't fit that definition, you're not vegan. I get it. I'm not suggesting that we change the definition of veganism. I'm just saying that we should consider the fact that humans are flawed, and that no one is perfectly consistent with their moral principles. If someone believes lying is wrong, and is committed to being honest, but tells a white lie every once in a while, would you call that person a liar? You might find total adherence to the vegan standard easy, but others do not. I think it comes down to differences in personality. Some people thrive with rigidity, while others, I would say most people, require a don't let perfect be the enemy of the good mindset to stay on track. Some level of gatekeeping is fair. We can't just accept that anyone who calls themselves vegan is vegan, otherwise the word loses meaning. Someone who eats plant-based but shamelessly buys wool and leather and goes to the zoo is obviously not vegan. You have to believe in the principle that animal exploitation is wrong. Not only that, but you have to avoid participating in it. But if you believe animal exploitation is wrong and generally avoid participating in it, but occasionally fail to live up to your principles, I think from a practical standpoint, it's better that you identify as a vegan than a non-vegan. Does that mean you can treat yourself to a nice steak once a year and call yourself vegan? No. I think that if a person is truly vegan, things like steak do not register as food. But things like bread and granola bars, while they may contain dairy or honey, still do because they're mostly plant-based. It's easier for the brain to compartmentalize and make exceptions for things that aren't so in your face, like a literal hunk of flesh. Again, I'm not saying that a little bit is okay. Have the donut, who cares? I'm just saying we don't need to take away someone's vegan card if they admit that they don't always make the right choices. If you think that I'm not a real vegan based on what I've said here, you can think that. But I'm gonna keep calling myself vegan, advocating for animal rights, doing political activism for animals, and avoiding animal products 99.9% of the time. Thank you so much for watching. I'm very interested to see the response because I don't think this is an unpopular opinion, but we'll see how it goes. Alright, peace out.